Let me talk to you about a moment in life that so many of us fear, a moment when the crowd fades, the lights dim, and the world seems to grow quiet. That moment is isolation. But before you shun it, before you try to escape it, I want you to hear me when I say this: isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not the place of your demise, it's the place of your rebirth. In our fast-paced, constantly connected world, isolation is viewed as the enemy. People run from it like it's a disease. They fear being alone because they've never learned how to be at peace in their own company. But I submit to you today that isolation is where transformation begins. It is in the stillness and the silence that God begins to whisper the secrets of your destiny. You can't hear him in the noise, you hear him in the quiet. I think about it. Every great transformation begins in a place of solitude. The caterpillar doesn't transform into a butterfly in the spotlight. It goes into a cocoon, into a small, dark, tight space. That cocoon isn't glamorous. Nobody watches the process. Nobody celebrates the struggle. But in that hidden, silent place, a metamorphosis is taking place. The old is being shed and something new is being born. And so it is with you. Sometimes God will isolate you not to harm you, but to heal you. He will pull you away from the crowd, away from the distractions, away from the voices that cloud your judgment. He will bring you into a season where it feels like you've been forgotten. But let me tell you something: being hidden is not the same as being abandoned. Being set apart is not the same as being left behind. Sometimes the greatest work God does in you is done in the places nobody sees. When you're in isolation, the distractions fall away. You start to see yourself for who you really are. You confront your fears, your insecurities, and your doubts. You see the cracks in your foundation, and you realize that before you can build, you've got to fix what's broken. It's in isolation that God strips away the layers of pretense. He takes away the mask you've been wearing, the lies you've been believing about yourself, and the limitations you've placed on your own potential. This is not an easy process. Oh no, isolation is uncomfortable. It's painful. It's lonely. You start to wonder if you'll ever come out of it. But let me tell you something about pain. It's a sign that something is happening. Pain is the price of growth. And when you're in that place of isolation, feeling like you're being pulled apart, you're not being destroyed, you're being transformed. Look at the life of Jesus. Before he began his public ministry, he was led into the wilderness, a place of isolation. He spent 40 days and 40 nights in that barren place, away from the crowds, away from the accolades, away from the comfort of community. It was there in the wilderness that he faced temptation. It was there that he prepared for the assignment that lay ahead. The wilderness was not a punishment, it was a proving ground. Isolation is your proving ground. It's where you learn to rely not on the opinions of others, but on the voice of God. It's where you stop seeking validation from the crowd and start seeking affirmation from the Creator. It's where you discover that your strength doesn't come from external sources, it comes from within. Now, let me be clear, isolation is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of people. Isolation is the presence of purpose. Loneliness makes you feel empty. Isolation fills you with clarity. Loneliness leaves you questioning your worth. Isolation reminds you of your value. When you understand the power of isolation, you stop fighting it and you start embracing it. Think about the giants of faith, the leaders, the innovators, the game changers. They all went through seasons of isolation. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he was called to lead the Israelites. David was anointed king, but spent years in the wilderness before he ascended the throne. Even Elijah, after calling down fire from heaven, found himself in a cave alone with God. Why does God use isolation? Because in isolation, he has your full attention. In isolation, he can refine you, reshape you, and renew you. It's in isolation that you find your strength, your focus, and your identity. It's in isolation that you learn how to walk by faith and not by sight. Some of you are in a season right now where it feels like you've been set aside. You've been taken off the stage, out of the spotlight. You've been put in a place where nobody sees you, nobody hears you, and nobody seems to care. But I want you to know that this is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your transformation. Isolation is not the place where you lose yourself. It's the place where you find yourself. It's not the place where you shrink back. It's the place where you rise up. It's not the place where you die. It's the place where you are reborn. The world tells you that you need to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. But God says, be still and know that I am God. He says, come away with me and I will show you great and mighty things that you do not know. You see, isolation is not a prison, it's a palace. It's where God prepares you for the greatness he has in store. It's where he strengthens your foundation so that when the storms come, you will not be shaken. It's where he equips you with the tools you need to fulfill your purpose. Transformation does not come without sacrifice. You cannot step into the new version of yourself while clinging to the old. The death of the old self is not a suggestion, it is a requirement. It is the price of evolution, the toll you must pay to walk into the promise of a greater future. And yet it is one of the hardest things you will ever face, because dying to the old self means saying goodbye to everything familiar, even if it's been holding you back. The old self is comfortable. It is predictable. It knows the patterns, the excuses, and the stories you've told yourself for years. It is the version of you that was shaped by your past experiences, your failures, and your failures. It's the you that settled for less because striving for more seemed too risky. But let me tell you something, the old self cannot carry the weight of your destiny. The old self cannot inhabit the space that was designed for the new you. To let the old self die is to let go of your old ways of thinking, your old habits, and your old identity. It's painful because we find security in what we know, even when what we know is no longer serving us. The old self whispers lies like, this is who you are, or you can't change, it clings to you because it fears being left behind. But here's the truth, you cannot hold on to the old and reach for the new at the same time. This process is not easy. It feels like tearing apart the fabric of who you are. It feels like losing yourself. But that is exactly what must happen. Jesus said, whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. The death of the old self is not about destruction, it's about resurrection. You cannot be reborn unless the old you is laid to rest. The death of the old self is a confrontation. It is a battle between who you were and who you are becoming. The old self will fight to stay alive. It will remind you of every failure, every disappointment, every limitation. It will tell you that change is too hard, that the risk is too great, that it's better to stay where you are. But transformation requires courage. It requires you to face the old self and say, I'm not that person anymore. This is where the pain comes in. You see, the old self is tied to your identity. It's tied to the relationships you've built, the environments you've lived in, and the narratives you've accepted as truth. To let it die means you may have to let go of certain relationships, step out of familiar environments, and challenge the narratives that have defined you. It means stepping into the unknown, into a space where you don't fully recognize yourself yet. But oh, the beauty of the process. When the old self dies, it makes room for the new. It's like a seed falling to the ground. That seed must be buried, it must break open, it must lose its original form so that it can grow into something greater. The same is true for you. The death of the old self is not the end, it's the beginning of something extraordinary. Think about it, when a snake grows, it sheds its skin. That old skin served a purpose, but it cannot stretch to accommodate the new growth. If the snake clung to its old skin, it would suffocate. It would die. The same is true for you. That old version of yourself, as comfortable as it may be, is too small for the person you are becoming. You must shed it. And let me tell you something about shedding. It's messy. It's not a clean process. It's not always pretty. It means facing your flaws, acknowledging your mistakes, and confronting the parts of yourself that you'd rather ignore. It means grieving the loss of who you were, even if you know it's necessary for your growth. The death of the old self also requires faith. Faith that what lies ahead is greater than what lies behind. Faith that the new version of you will be stronger, wiser, and more capable than the old. Faith that the pain of letting go is worth the promise of what's to come. Look at the life of Saul, who became Paul. Saul was a man of power, authority, and influence, but his old self was rooted in persecution, in blindness and pride. On the road to Damascus, he encountered a transformative moment. That encounter didn't just change his name, it required the death of Saul so that Paul could be born. Saul had to die to his old ways of thinking, his old mission, his old identity. Only then could he step into the fullness of his purpose. This is what the death of the old self looks like. It is a stripping away of everything that no longer aligns with who you are called to be. It is a process of unlearning and relearning. It is a journey through the fire that refines you, burns away the impurities, and leaves you stronger, purer, and more focused. In the moments when you feel like you're losing yourself, remember that you are. But it's not the loss of who you are that's happening, it's the release of who you were. The old self is a shell. It served its purpose, but now it must fall away. It must make room for the new self to rise. There is a unique kind of work that happens when no one is watching. It's the work that doesn't get applause, doesn't receive recognition, and often goes unnoticed by the world. This is the work of rebuilding in the shadows. It's not glamorous, it's not Instagram worthy, and it certainly doesn't come with immediate rewards. But let me tell you, it's in the shadows where true greatness is forged. When life has broken you, when circumstances have shattered the pieces of who you thought you were, the instinct is often to look for a way to fix it in the open. We want quick fixes, public wins, and visible signs of progress. But real rebuilding doesn't happen in the light, it happens in the dark. It happens in the quiet moments when it's just you in the silence. It happens in the hidden places where nobody sees the tears, the prayers, or the struggle. Rebuilding in the shadows means stepping away from the stage, from the validation, from the opinions of others. It's about laying a foundation that is strong enough to support the future you're building. And a strong foundation isn't built with an audience. It's built in solitude, one brick at a time, with patience, persistence, and faith. Think about a house under construction. Before the walls go up, before the roof is added, there is a period where all the work is happening underground. The foundation is being poured, the framework is being set, and none of it is visible to the naked eye. But if that foundation isn't solid, it doesn't matter how beautiful the house looks on the outside, it won't stand. The same is true for your life. Rebuilding in the shadows is about creating a foundation that can withstand the storms ahead. The shadows can feel lonely. They can feel isolating. When you're in that place, it's easy to believe that you've been forgotten, overlooked, or left behind. But let me remind you, the shadows are not a punishment, they are a place of preparation. God does some of his best work in the dark. Think about it, seeds are planted in the soil, hidden from view before they sprout into something magnificent. Babies grow in the womb, away from the eyes of the world before they take their first breath. And when God formed the earth, the Bible says he started in darkness. Rebuilding in the shadows is not about hiding from the world, it's about being hidden for a purpose. It's about taking the time to heal, to grow, and to become before you step back into the light. When you rush the process, when you try to rebuild in the spotlight, you risk creating something that looks good on the outside but is hollow on the inside. In the shadows, there is no need for performance. There is no pressure to be perfect, no need to impress anyone. It's a space where you can be raw, honest, and vulnerable. It's where you can confront the broken pieces of your life and begin to put them back together. And let me tell you, this kind of work is messy. It's not linear. There are days when you'll feel like you're making progress and days when you'll feel like you're going backward. But every step, every tear, every moment in the shadows is part of the process. The world teaches us to value what is seen. It tells us that success is about visibility, about being noticed, about achieving milestones that others can applaud. But God values what is unseen. He values the character that is built when no one is looking, the faith that is strengthened in private, and the resilience that is forged in the fire of adversity. When you're rebuilding in the shadows, you have the freedom to experiment, to fail, and to learn without the pressure of public scrutiny. You can take your time to discover who you really are, to define your values, and to align your actions with your purpose. It's a process of stripping away the layers of who you were and stepping into the fullness of who you are meant to be. This is not a glamorous process. It's not something people will celebrate or even notice, but don't mistake invisibility for insignificance. The most important work often happens in the quiet. The growth that matters most is the kind that happens beneath the surface. Think about David before he became king. He spent years in the shadows, tending sheep, fighting lions and bears, and honing his skills with a slingshot. Nobody saw those moments. Nobody applauded his victories in the wilderness. But those years of obscurity were not wasted, they were essential. They prepared him for the day he would stand before Goliath and eventually lead a nation. Rebuilding in the shadows is about preparation. It's about doing the work that nobody sees so that when the time comes, you'll be ready to step into the fullness of your calling. It's about focusing on the process, not the outcome, and trusting that the time spent in the dark is not in vain. The shadows are not easy. They test your patience, your perseverance, and your faith. But they also build your character, your strength, and your resolve. When you're in the shadows, it's tempting to compare yourself to others, to look at the progress they're making and feel like you're falling behind. But remember, your journey is your own. What God is building in you is unique, and it requires a unique process. The shadows are where you learn to depend not on the applause of others, but on the quiet assurance that you are doing the work you are called to do. It's where you learn to trust the process, to embrace the struggle, and to find joy in the small victories that no one else will ever see. We live in a world that is obsessed with results. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with images of people celebrating their wins, showcasing their successes, and basking in the applause of others. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that the destination is the only thing that matters. But I'm here to tell you today that the real power, the real growth, the real transformation comes not in the applause, but in the process. The process is where the work is done. It's where the foundation is laid, where the lessons are learned, where the character is built. The process is the long, winding road that nobody wants to talk about because it's not glamorous. It doesn't come with immediate rewards, and it doesn't guarantee recognition. But the process is what shapes you, molds you, and prepares you for the next level. The applause is fleeting. It's here one moment and gone the next. It's shallow, temporary, and often deceptive. You can't build a life on applause because it doesn't sustain you. But the process is deep. It's lasting. It's what gives you roots, so that when the storms of life come, you won't be blown away. Embracing the process means understanding that every step matters, even the ones that feel insignificant. It's about showing up every day, putting in the work, and trusting that what you're doing now will lead to something greater later. It's about focusing on the journey rather than the destination, the growth rather than the glory. The process is often slow. It requires patience, persistence, and perseverance. There will be days when it feels like you're not making any progress, days when you question whether all the effort is worth it. But let me remind you of something: the process is not linear. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line. It's messy, unpredictable. and sometimes painful. But every struggle, every setback, every moment of doubt is part of the process. Think about an artist creating a masterpiece. The final painting may be beautiful, but it didn't start that way. It began as a blank canvas, as rough sketches, as layers of paint that didn't always look like much. The process of creating that masterpiece was filled with mistakes, adjustments, and moments of frustration. But the artist didn't stop. They kept working, kept refining, kept pushing forward. The applause may come when the painting is finished, but the real magic happened during the process. The problem with seeking applause is that it shifts your focus. Instead of concentrating on the work, you start concentrating on the reward. Instead of pouring your heart into the process, you start chasing approval. And let me tell you something, when you chase applause, you lose sight of your purpose. You start cutting corners, compromising your values, and settling for less because you're more concerned with being seen than with being true to yourself. Embracing the process means letting go of the need for validation. It means finding fulfillment in the work itself, in the progress you're making, and in the person you're becoming. It's about learning to appreciate the small victories, the quiet moments of growth, and the lessons that come from failure. When you embrace the process, you stop comparing yourself to others. You stop measuring your worth by how much applause you receive, and you start measuring it by how much effort you're putting in. You understand that everyone's journey is different, and that what matters most is staying true to your own path. The process is where you discover your strength. It's where you learn to push through the pain, to keep going when you feel like giving up, and to find joy in the struggle. It's where you develop the resilience to face challenges, the discipline to stay committed, and the courage to take risks. Let's look at the life of Joseph. He had a dream, a vision of greatness, but the process didn't take him straight to the throne. It took him through the pit, through slavery, through imprisonment. Those years of struggle, of obscurity, of hard work, those were the process. And it was in the process that Joseph learned humility, patience, and wisdom. By the time he reached the palace, he wasn't just a man with a dream, he was a man who was ready to lead. You see, the process is about preparation. It's about equipping you with the tools you need to handle the blessings that are coming. It's about making sure you're strong enough, wise enough, and grounded enough to carry the weight of your destiny. The process may be hard, but it's necessary. The applause can't teach you these lessons. It can't prepare you for the challenges that lie ahead. It can't sustain you when things get tough. But the process can. The process builds a foundation that no amount of applause can ever shake. When you embrace the process, you begin to see the value in every step of the journey. You start to appreciate the struggles because you know they're making you stronger. You start to embrace the setbacks because you know they're setting you up for a comeback. You start to celebrate the work you're doing in the present because you know it's leading to a brighter future. The process teaches you patience. It teaches you that growth takes time, that progress doesn't happen overnight, and that success is a result of consistent effort over time. It teaches you to trust the timing of your life, to trust the work you're putting in, and to trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. There comes a time in every journey when the work in the shadows is complete, the refining process has done its work, and you are called to step back into the light. But this time it's different. You are not returning as the same person who disappeared. You are not returning burdened by the doubts, insecurities, and limitations of your past self. This time you reemerge with purpose. Purpose is not something you stumble upon by chance. It is something that is cultivated, refined, and clarified through the process of transformation. When you have been through the fire, when you have experienced the breaking and rebuilding, purpose becomes your guiding force. It is no longer a vague idea or an abstract concept. It is a conviction, a clarity, a sense of direction that cannot be shaken. To reemerge with purpose is to step into the world with intention. It is to move forward with a sense of who you are, what you stand for, and why you are here. It is not about seeking validation or approval from others. It is not about proving yourself to anyone. It is about fulfilling the unique calling on your life, the mission that only you can accomplish. When you reemerge, you do so with the strength of someone who has been through the struggle. You carry the scars of your battles, but those scars are not signs of defeat. They are badges of honor. They remind you of what you've overcome and what you're capable of. They remind you that you have been tested and proven, that you have faced adversity and come out stronger on the other side. Purpose gives you focus. When you reemerge, you are no longer distracted by the noise, the opinions, or the expectations of others. You are no longer chasing every opportunity or saying yes to every request. Purpose helps you discern what aligns with your mission and what doesn't. It gives you the courage to say no to the things that don't serve you and the boldness to pursue the things that do. But let me tell you, reemerging with purpose is not always easy. The world will not always understand the new you. People who were comfortable with the old version of you may struggle to accept the changes. They may question your motives, doubt your capabilities, or try to pull you back into old patterns. But when you are anchored in purpose, you are not swayed by external opinions. You are not deterred by criticism or rejection. You are focused on the path ahead, confident in the work you are called to do. To reemerge with purpose is to embrace your story, every part of it. The good, the bad, the painful, and the triumphant. Your purpose is often born out of your pain. The very things you thought would break you are the things that give you the strength and insight to help others. The struggles you've endured become the foundation of your testimony, the evidence of your resilience, and the source of your wisdom. Purpose is not about perfection. It's not about having all the answers or never making mistakes. It's about being authentic, being willing to show up as you are, and being committed to growing into the person you're meant to be. When you reemerge, you do so with the understanding that your journey is ongoing. You are not finished, you are just beginning a new chapter. Reemerging with purpose also requires humility. It's not about seeking glory or recognition for yourself. It's about serving others, making an impact, and contributing to something greater than yourself. Purpose is never self-centered. It is always outward focused, rooted in a desire to give, to help, and to uplift. Think about a phoenix rising from the ashes. When it reemerges, it does so with renewed strength, beauty, and clarity of purpose. The fire it endured was not the end, it was the catalyst for its rebirth. The same is true for you. The challenges you've faced, the losses you've experienced, and the transformations you've undergone were not the end of your story. They were the preparation for your reemergence. Purpose is not static, it evolves as you grow. When you reemerge, you may not have everything figured out, and that's okay. What matters is that you are moving forward with intention, with a commitment to staying true to yourself and to the mission you've been given. Purpose is a journey, not a destination. It's something you discover and rediscover as you navigate life's twists and turns. To reemerge with purpose is to live with a sense of urgency. You understand that time is precious, that life is short, and that you have been given a unique opportunity to make a difference. You are no longer content to drift through life, waiting for things to happen. You take ownership of your journey, take responsibility for your actions, and take bold steps toward the future you envision. Reemerging with purpose is also about alignment. It's about ensuring that your actions, your choices, and your relationships are in harmony with your values and your goals. It's about living with integrity, being true to yourself, and refusing to compromise on the things that matter most. When you reemerge with purpose, you become a light in the darkness. You inspire others to pursue their own purpose, to embrace their own journey, and to rise above their own challenges. Your life becomes a testament to the power of transformation, a reminder that it is never too late to start anew. and a beacon of hope for those who are still finding their way. Purpose gives you resilience. When obstacles arise, when setbacks occur, when the road gets tough, you don't give up. You don't retreat. You keep moving forward because you know your why. You know that every challenge is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to strengthen your resolve.